What is going on, y'all? Psych Perspectives, GeoFucks here. And once again, we're talking about a mass shooting. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name of the city in Texas correctly, and I apologize for mispronouncing it and butchering it if I do. Uvalde, Texas. Again, I apologize for mispronouncing it. If I am, but we're talking about 19 plus people who have died, and I say plus because there's reports that one of the children survived the shooting in the school, but then died at the hospital. And there's also, one of the teachers who sacrificed her life protecting the children in her classroom. She passed away. She died. She was killed. And then a few days later, her husband died. Right? He just collapsed. And now there's 4 children in that family that are now parentless. Another teacher was also killed. And then 2 weeks ago, we had the Buffalo shooting at Tops at the grocery store. And every single time this stuff happens, we're always sitting up here being told prayers and thoughts. No real actions are actually being taken to prevent mass shootings, to prevent gun violence. And then if we're really being honest, there's no real push to support mental health, let alone prevent bullying. Right? Because in the same breath, you got all these, and I'm going to call it for how I see it. From my perspective, from my opinion, we have all of these right-wing, conservative Republicans, megas, Trumpers, who keep wanting to talk about mental health. And the thing is, mental health is very important and it does need to be talked about. However, don't use it to justify violence and abuse, especially when damn near every other person you talk to has a mental health problem, a mental health illness. A lot of people are undiagnosed, and I wonder why. Oh, that's right, because we don't have universal health care. Everyone doesn't have health care insurance. And then if you do have health care insurance, you will be surprised. It typically doesn't support or cover mental health. So a lot of times you're still going to have to pay out of pocket, where you got mental health therapists that are charging $175 plus per hour. And a lot of people can't afford that. And that's therapists, counselors. Now, we haven't even gotten into getting psych evals and going to a psychologist, a psychiatrist. That's a whole nother level of money that's going to be required of you to pay. So, but this is also the same Republican, conservative, right-wing, mega folks, Trumper folks, who don't support Affordable Care Act, don't want people to have access to health care, universal health care, but yet wants to talk about how mental health is so important. And then I'm going to say this. Almost every other person has some type of mental health illness, problem, situation, and many people are undiagnosed. But at the same time, everybody ain't sitting around going around doing mass shootings and committing murder and killing folks and mowing people down. That's not what everybody's doing. I'm going to speak from a personal level here. Full transparency. I have major severe depression, ADHD, autistic. I'm on the autistic spectrum. Anxiety. But guess what? Am I going around shooting and killing everybody? Am I going around carrying an AR-15 assault rifles and military-grade weapons so I can go mow down folks because I'm having a bad day? No. And once again, anytime we talk about gun control or doing gun restrictions or making it harder for people to purchase, high-powered military-grade weapons or doing mental health checks, etc., to avoid people who are dangerous to themselves and obviously to the public, obtaining these weapons of mass destruction that's going to add to the killings and the mass shootings and the deaths and the senseless violence. Nobody wants to do that, right? But I want to talk about this too. Those teachers, those two teachers, and teachers in general, murdered protecting the children. They literally sacrificed their lives for those children in their profession as a teacher. And let's talk about it. A lot of teachers, social workers, community health workers, human and social service employees, professions, we are grossly underpaid. Grossly, severely underpaid. And you mean to tell me you, on average, when, for example, in my state, people are getting hired in as teachers between $35,000 and $50,000. And $50,000, that's if you're lucky. It's more so 35 to 45, and hell, 35 to 40. And yet, okay. And when you look at that, you are risking your life getting gunned down at school, at your job. And then they also expect you to typically pay for your own supplies. I mean, more and more we are seeing cuts to public education. Okay? We are seeing cuts to public education left and right. So a lot of times these teachers, they have to pay for their own supplies. They're bringing in markers, crayons, pencils, papers, binders, tissue, napkins, hand sanitizer, bleach, sanitary wipes, whatever it may be, out of their own pocket, and or they're crowdfunding and getting donations so they can get these products and materials so they can have a quality education for their students. And a lot of times these teachers, their classrooms are overpacked. I mean, you'll go in some of these classrooms and it's 30 to 40 kids in one classroom with one teacher. Teachers are expected to not only teach, to educate, to teach the lesson, but a lot of times they're also supposed to be the therapist, the counselor. They're also trying to, do data and reporting, grading. They're teaching the curriculum. A lot of times they're expected to be the parent, because a lot of times the parent is also not really a parent. Let's just keep it real. Okay? And now you also want them to sacrifice their lives for $40,000 if you're lucky. And that's before taxes and deductions. After taxes and deductions, that's a whole nother, you done lost 20 to 25% of your income. And then, like I said, you're being murdered at school protecting your students. And then in the same breath, there's all of these allegations and video. I mean, there's video footage of the police in Uvalde, who they basically blocked off the parents from being able to go and rescue their own children. And there's video footage of them, pushing people, arresting them. One man is literally, one of the fathers of a kid at the school was literally on the ground. The police had him on the ground. And then there's also, allegations and video footage, etc., that there were armed police officers at the school. But for some reason, those armed police officers decided that, you know what, we're gonna help the murderer, the domestic terrorist, the mass shooter. We're gonna help him, them enter into the building. How you doing? Why don't you come on in? We got a whole school building full of innocent people here. Come on in. Look at these kids. Let me show you this classroom. You want to pick them off too? Hey, what about the third graders? Literally. And then the gunman, or the person, the mass shooter, was literally in the school, 40 minutes to an hour? Just the entire time. I mean, just murdering, slaughtering children, teachers, people, human beings. And where were the boys in blue? Where were the boys in blue? Where were they? Where was the thin line of blue? Where were the blue lives? Where were they? You actually had police officers screaming into the school, telling kids, let us know if you need help. There's a gun person, a person in here with a gun, a high-powered assault rifle, mowing down human beings, children, teachers, people. You hear the rapid gunfire. You hear the screaming. You hear the crying. You hear the agony. And you're telling the children the police are telling the children, let us know if you need help. And one of the kids actually did speak up. Help. And the mass shooter heard that child, came over there, killed that child, shot that child, killed that child, murdered that child. Why would the police tell them to make noise knowing that they're in a situation like that? And then I thought the whole thing was, well, if we had good guys with guns, good people with guns can stop bad people with guns. Again, you had police who basically escorted the murderer, domestic terrorist, mass shooter into the damn school building. And then the police waited, 40 minutes to an hour to actually start going into the school. and they were barricading the parents and assaulting and harassing and disrespecting the parents. And the parents were coming up there because they were trying to save their children. Meanwhile, the Blue Lives, the police, to serve and to protect, I don't know who, because every time you turn around, you know, rather it's Tops in Buffalo, Stony in Florida, Parkland, Florida, various situations across the country, various situations throughout history. And as you can see currently, we're not seeing the police actually do their jobs. Oftentimes, they are not preventing crime at all, and oftentimes they're not solving crime. And again, it's always about how, you know, they sacrifice and they put their lives on the line. No, they don't. Not all of them. And that's obvious. Meanwhile, the teachers who are unarmed, and it's not their job to sit up and have to try to protect. That's not their job. They're not the police. You are. But guess what? It's the teachers. It's the women. Because let's not forget about Sandy Hook. It's the women. It's the teachers. They're sacrificing their lives to protect the children. They're the ones actually protecting and serving. And that's kind of always been the case, you know, but yet we don't give women, we don't give mothers, we don't give teachers, there's so many people that we downplay, disrespect, belittle. We don't give them their respect. But meanwhile, we'll sit up here and hype up people that are mediocre and ain't doing shit, doing the bare minimum, and we up in there. And these people are, anyways. They either could have prevented it from day one, because they literally allowed him to go into the school building. Like, they literally basically escorted him into the building. They could have been stopped the person. They could have stopped them before any shootings took place. Person could have been, you know, subdued, restrained. And you know what? Take them to a mental hospital. You are right. That's one part that the mayor, even though I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but that one part, if it is true and y'all are looking to get donations and funds and the city donated the land, I hope you do get a mental health hospital, because we need them everywhere. That would have benefited, because you could have subdued and restrained that person before they even got into that school building. And that person could have been sent to the mental hospital so they can get service and cared for, since it's a mental health issue, right? But it's also a gun violence issue. And I also want to bring this up. Uvalde, or Uvalde, again, I apologize if I am butchering the name. But Uvalde, Texas, that city is what, 72% Hispanic, Latino? I think it's like 54 miles away from the Chihuahua or Chihuahua. It's 54 miles away from the Mexico border. And that particular city is 70 to 72% Hispanic Latino. Most of those children in that school building are Hispanic Latino. Yet, they have a white mayor. And then when you look at who's on the police force, all I'm saying is this is a common situation across the country. You have people who are in positions of power and who are elected as well, to positions of power who are supposed to be representing their constituents, aka you, and they don't look nothing like you. They don't live in the same communities as you. They haven't gone through similar experiences as you. So how are they going to represent you? Oh, that's right. They're not. That's what's happening right now. Not just in Uvalde, Texas, but look around. Anyways, so and I want to say this. There are police that do their job. There are police who go beyond the call of duty and have sacrificed their lives and have died, have been killed on the job. I'm not saying that that is not the case, but that's just it. If we had resources for mental health, and we had resources for people to not live in poverty in the first place, to have access to health care so they can take care of their mental and their physical. If we really would address the violence, the mental health issues, and the gun violence, and actually had common sense, logical, common sense gun laws and restrictions on certain things, a combination of all of this, we would have less police officers being killed. And obviously, we wouldn't have all of these damn school shootings, mass shootings. You at the library, you at church. That's another thing. Another situation, I believe that was in California. You're having mass shootings back to back, and everybody just seems to think like it's not that. This is out of control. This is nuts. This is crazy. Those children are dead. The people in Buffalo, minding their business, going grocery shopping, are dead. People going to a church. I believe a physician, a medical doctor, sacrificed his life to stop the gunman and was killed at a church, minding their own business. And it's body after body after body. We sit up, we watch people cry on TV. We see it on the social media. We having all of these memorials. It's literally about to be Memorial Day. We hear different politicians talking about how it's mental health, how it's gun control, we need gun control, how it's this, how it's that, but yet neither is really doing what they should be doing. Because again, the Republicans will talk about it being about mental health, but yet they don't want you to have health care insurance. They don't want you to be able to get help for your mental health. And then when you do, there's a caveat, case in point. You support mental health and well-being, but then you don't want transgender people to be able to access gender-affirming care. But you're worried about mental health. Gender-affirming care literally is proven to reduce the suicide rates in the transgender community. But you care about mental health. Then, Democrats, the left, liberal. There's so many people who have been in their positions for decades, and they've had all of this time where they could have been passed common sense gun laws. They could have been put restrictions on certain guns. They could have been made sure that people had universal health care so they could have mental health, right? They could have increased the wage so it's a living wage that's that stays consistent with the cost of living and inflation. On both sides, right? Both parties, right? Because we have a two-party stronghold in the USA. So both parties have members on each side that have been there for decades. So they've had all this time to do these things, but yet They claim to be so, we need gun control. We need restrictor gun laws. We need mental health is the problem. But yet, then how come you're not implementing any? Anyways, so it's in our face that, people really don't care about us. I mean, I am done. Now, I will say this. State and local elections are very important. And I've said this before. In many cases, state and local elections are more important than the presidential election. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't noticed over the past years, some of us already knew, some of us are learning, some of us are still kind of not aware. So I want to say this. State and local elections are very essential to your everyday life. Because at the end of the day, who your mayor is, who your city council folks are, or your board of trustees, who's your school board, who's your senator, your state senate, your state house representatives, your federal senators, your federal Congress folks, who's on your state Supreme Court justice, and obviously who's on the U.S. Supreme Court justice. Your governor, your lieutenant governor, your secretary of, your attorney general, your secretary of state, the state board of education, all your county commissioners, their local government and state government is arguably way more important than the presidential election. Because if you haven't noticed, the president can't do everything. And if you haven't noticed, when you're not holding your elected officials accountable, and or you are electing people who do not serve your best interests, and or you just simply don't vote, see, we're all at fault. Including me, including us that vote, including us that volunteer, including us that organize and mobilize. Everybody's at fault. It ain't just the people that don't vote, because we all are part of this. I'm going to end it on this. When you don't hold elected officials accountable, and or you vote for people that don't have your best interests, and or you don't vote, like I said, we all are at fault. We all have to pay we're paying for it. We're all paying for this. You end up with the bullshit that we have. You got elected officials, like I said, on both sides, because we're in a two-party stronghold in the USA. Yes, we have independent parties. We've got third parties, but let's be real, we are in a two-party stronghold in the USA. So, you got people on both sides, been there for decades, and talking about the same shit every damn year and haven't implemented anything to actually address it. Then you got people who, they keep talking about how it's make America great again and America first, and we got to do this and we got to do that, and Black Lives Matter, and every other group, like I said, because if you notice, both parties love to play on this. They play on everybody's social identities. Pay attention. They're all telling us what we want to hear, but then when they get in office, it's a totally different story. And that's where those of us that vote, we also need to be holding the elected official accountable. And if they don't do what they say they're going to do, you vote their asses out. And another thing, just because you've been in that seat, that position, that elected position, don't mean another person can't primary your ass. Because that's the problem. We sitting up here electing the same damn folks decade after decade, and or not holding those that are in office accountable, and or getting swayed and thinking that this person got our back, voting for people that don't even have our best interests, and or some of us don't vote at all but complain 24/7. So it's like we all are a part of this problem. So those kids, they didn't have to die. Those teachers didn't have to die. That community didn't have to be traumatized. The people in Buffalo grocery shopping didn't have to die. That community didn't have to be further traumatized. And it's a story after story after story. If you're really about mental health, then be about mental health. Make sure we have universal health care. Make sure everybody has access to therapy and counseling. Make sure everybody is not living in poverty. Make sure people is not homeless. Since you're so worried about mental health, and if you're really worried about gun control, then do something about it. Pass legislation. But stop feeding us this mess. Because we're dying out here and we're sick and tired of listening to y'all talk about the same shit. Yet every day we sitting up basically waiting to be the next target. Because you don't know if it's going to be mass shootings, domestic terrorist attacks, foreign terrorist attacks, COVID-19, monkeypox, poverty. You don't know what it's going to be. But yet, we got elected officials telling us that, all lives matter. But what about those kids in Uvalde, Texas? What about those people in Buffalo, New York? What about the people in Flint, Michigan that's still sitting up paying some of the highest water bills in the USA for water that is still unsafe? What about the transgendered folks that you don't want to go to the bathroom? You don't want them to go to school. You don't want them to have health care. But I thought you said mental health was important. I thought you said all lives mattered. I thought, we were serious about gun control. We were going to do something about it. Well, people are dying and suffering and they're tired.